All right, and we're live again. Devin, what's up, man? Thanks so much for coming on.
No, thank you for having me. This is awesome.
Yeah, man, super grateful for it. I really loved seeing the work that you've done with Strive and all the work that you've done in your career, and not just from the coaching side, but really how you evolved it into going into the ownership, into the franchisee. I'm sure there's a lot of, you know, peaks and valleys along that journey, so I'm excited to hear all about it.
No, yeah, definitely. I mean, that's any area in life, there's ups and downs, and entrepreneurship, especially in the fitness industry, there's plenty of them.
Yeah, no, no doubt. So we'll tap into a bit of everything. You first started coaching when you were 13, is that right?
This episode is brought to you by Paluva. Paluva is a new zero-drop minimalist shoe with a distinctive five-toe design. Paluvas give you the most authentic barefoot style experience, but with sufficient cushioning to use for all manner of everyday movement, fitness, and athletics. I've been using these new shoes in both strength training and my daily walks, and I have to tell you, they are by far the best minimalist shoe that I've come across. The popularity of minimalist shoes have been on a big upswing, but Paluvas are a step ahead of every other zero-drop wide box shoe because of the critical feature of individual five-toe articulation, a separate slot for each of your toes. This allows for correct dynamic movement of the foot through walking or running, which is impossible when toes are encased in a single box. Now, minimalist shoes have faced controversy in recent years about causing injury from inappropriate use. So the big picture mission is start walking and living in Paluvas as often as possible. Use your specialized running shoes, basketball shoes, work boots, or high heels when you need to, but wear Paluvas as much as possible to reawaken the natural functionality of the human foot to stand, walk, run, and perform. And Paluvas also have a sleek, cool design, so you get a barefoot shoe that looks great as well as feels great. And now you can try a pair of Paluvas with no risk and realize that these are the most comfortable shoes you've ever worn. They are literally designed to feel like you're walking barefoot on a putting green. So you can go visit paluva.com and use a code SC15 for a 15% discount off your first pair. That's SC15 at checkout. Thank you very much. Let's get to the show.
Yeah, I mean, it was under the table, it was a little hush hush kind of, So if
How'd
you're,
that come about? How'd that start? Because it's not really the ripe age when most people start coaching. So I was kind of curious to see that.
yeah, actually, I got my black belt. I've done martial arts and sports all my life, and I got my black belt, and there was an opportunity to become like a part-time instructor. It wasn't like an official thing, but started helping out in classes, and then got offered a job, to get paid cash, and loved it. And the crazy thing though, as a 13-year-old, I was coaching not just like kids younger than me, but like my peers, and actually even like running some of the adult classes.
Yeah.
And I don't know if that's where I started to develop like a different tonality when I talk and stuff, because there was never complaints when I was running the class. Like, and honestly, even at 13 or even 15, when I started running like the adult classes, like they thought I was like 18, or 20 years old, like, just from the way I spoke or presented myself. So they never were like, "Oh, you're just a kid. You're in middle school."
Yeah. Was that kind of a natural process for you of getting into coaching, or was it kind of like a very focused change in your tone? It's like, all right, now I'm in front of the class and I'm teaching. I need to work on this a little bit more. Was that the thought process at all, like in a young teen year?
No, not so much. I mean, I think naturally, I guess I have some of the characteristics of that, like coaching or that leadership. And I mean, because I wouldn't consider myself a leader, but my team and everything would, right? And I think that's just always how I've been. Like one of my core values is to have a positive impact, right? I want to help people. I want to help other people succeed on their journeys, in their careers, whatever the case may be. So I think naturally, just that being one of my core values, kind of just transitioned and allowed me to, pour into people without having to be like, okay, how do I, give someone value?
Yeah. It is. It's weird stepping in like that first time you step in front of a group when now you're not like just one of the peers, but now you're the one that's instructing. My first time I was, I think, 23 years old when I stepped in front of like a group of people in there. And I still remember like being that like kind of freaked out, like, oh my God, like they're following me. And someone came up and just be like, look, you're the leader. Like if you come in with confidence, they're going to follow you. So just have a good time with it.
Yeah, I mean, I don't get me wrong, like I still get nervous, but I think like with the martial arts space, like that was like I was comfortable there. That was my domain, right? And even like with my gym, like I could speak to anyone inside of my gym because it's my safe space, right? But for example, earlier this year I was on stage and I had told the person that, was leading the event, I was like, give me 5 years that I'll be speaking on one of your stages. And I'd said it kind of cocky, but not really. It was more of to, kind of hold myself to it. And within 2 years, I was on stage. And don't get me wrong, like speaking to other grown men and grown women, I was a little nervous, like, shaking a little bit, butterflies in your stomach when you're having to go on stage for the first time,
Sure.
even though I'm confident in everything. So there, it is nerve wracking at different levels too. I mean, so that never really goes away. It just, gets easier and easier with time.
Yeah. And it's those things always come beforehand, right? It's usually like as soon as you're in it and you get like 2 minutes in, it's like, all right, yeah, I've done this before. And then you just start getting in the flow.
Exactly. I mean,
Yeah.
I think the easiest transition for me was because I'm not, don't get me wrong, like even as a martial art instructor, even as a kid, like I've never been like one of those raw kind of trainers. Like
Mhm.
building a personal training company, not off of, motivation and, high fives and butt slaps. Like it was, you came here to work. Like, don't waste your time, don't waste my time. Like let's do this,
Yeah.
and so I've always been more straightforward, still motivational, but straightforward. And, it just resonates really well with people.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting because, I think sometimes when you're going into speaking or any type of, coaching or teaching world, like you think that there's a way to do it before you do it, right? Not
Mhm.
realizing that everybody's got a different process or a different flow. I remember I would go to some seminars and there'd be people who like took up the entire stage, like working, like they're so energetic, they're like sweating talking to people. And then one of my good friends who I work with shows up in like jeans and a wallet chain, like with his hands in his pockets, kind of just like sitting back and just chilling. And he's just as captivating because you're being, for as cliche of a term, you're being your authentic self. So it's kind of like, don't try and be somebody else. Just do what feels best for you. And people are going to respond to that.
No, and I think that's so true because I mean, even that's how I tell my team and stuff here, even as trainers, like, don't try to train the way I train. Don't try to sell the way I sell. Like, we don't have scripts, like word for word scripts. Like, we have outlines. Like,
Mhm.
here's the bullet points that you got to cover in like the order. But it's one of those things where if you try to read it the way I would sell it, it's not going to come off as authentic and it's going to sound weird. And if I was to read it how you would sell, again, same thing. So here's the bullet points. Just do you. Like, just have a conversation. That's all it is.
Yeah.
And even speaking on stage, it's just having a conversation. The weird part is like even with doing, podcasts and all these things, sometimes having a conversation with yourself and no direct feedback or conversations is a little bit different. But again, it's just a conversation. You're just telling a story.
Yeah, no doubt. So, oh, I love this already. So getting into a little bit of your journey, as you said, like kind of going from, you coached early on in martial arts and then eventually went into personal training, which eventually led into gym ownership and then franchising, now going into masterminds and speaking. How did all this really start for you of getting into the world of fitness and coaching? Like, I know you had the early stage with martial arts. When did it transition into getting into more of like the health and the fitness side?
Honestly, I kind of fell into it during college. I went to college initially for, business management and, the very generic, you know, category. And during the time, the martial arts schedule and stuff wasn't lining up with my class schedule. So I got a job as a personal trainer, actually as a personal training, like sales counselor first, then transitioned to a personal trainer because I didn't really like the whole how to, reading scripts and selling and then not being able to train the client. Um, but I was like, man, this is a great college job. Like I can make my own hours. I could do, so that's what I always told myself during college. This is my college job. And then during college, I learned that, there was a course, basically a major kinesiology. And I was like, oh, wow, I could just study this. I was like, this is way more interesting than business management. Numbers and stuff were easier for me. And so I always got bored. And don't get me wrong, I didn't know every business, topic, but it was just boring to me.
Yeah.
So I was like, I could go learn about how the body moves and functions and all that. Switched, second year of college, switched majors, but that still didn't resonate with me like, oh, I'm going to be a trainer and own a gym and all that kind of stuff. I actually wanted to be a firefighter. And then over the years, I started liking it more and more, build up my clientele, moved to a private gym and became the head trainer and manager. And then eventually that led to, me transitioning just to running my own personal training company. And that's where things really started to like, okay, like this is, I'm a solopreneur. I'm still an entrepreneur, but I'm a solopreneur, and I need to kind of take this to the next level.
Mhm.
So, I mean, during that time, I made some connections. I helped found a basketball school, one of those prep schools. So I was the strength and conditioning side of it, helped build that out. But it wasn't really my speed. It wasn't my thing I wanted to really create. So after the first year and helping them launch it, I actually stepped away so that I can launch my gym and my business model. And then now we've scaled that to launching the franchise. And now we're
Mhm.
opening up in Tampa, Florida. We'll be opening up in Dallas and then Washington, Vancouver as well.
I love it, man. But it's funny. My first dream is I wanted to be a firefighter. Isn't that funny? Yeah, I went to EMT and in EMT school and everything like that. I was going on that path. Why'd you want to be a firefighter?
Honestly, I just liked the concept. My dad was, a Los Angeles police officer, and so growing up, that's what I wanted to do. You want to be like your dad and stuff. And
Sure.
he actually basically deterred me from it. He kept telling me, "Don't do it. I don't want you to be an officer." Blah blah blah. And then I was like, "Well, firefighters, they work 2 days or 3 days, and they have
Yeah.
3 or 4." I was like, "That's pretty solid schedule." So I was going that route, did the EMT as well and everything. But then knowing that I had to, at least for in Los Angeles, to get a job and stuff, you work as an EMT and put in those extra hours. And I was like, so you're telling me I'm going to leave my 6-figure personal training company to go make minimum wage as an EMT, or
Yeah.
maybe a little above minimum wage? And I had a friend doing it at the time, and I was watching him, and I was like, I don't want to do that. I was like, ain't no way. Like, you've been doing this for like 6 years trying to get a job. I was like, nah. I was like, then I started like really thinking about it, and I was like, I don't think, I mean, over my personal training company years and why I went into being a solopreneur is like I couldn't work for companies, and that was my issue. Was like I couldn't read scripts because it just didn't sound like me, and then I got in trouble for going off script, even though I was one of the highest, sales, counselors and
Mhm.
trainers, and I was like, I don't understand why you're getting mad if I'm getting a better result, just not doing it your way. Like I'm not doing anything
Right.
dishonest or anything. Like why can't I just do it my way? So then I was like, you know what? I like doing my own thing, and there is real no ceiling cap. And that was the most interesting thing to me. Because
Mhm.
even in sports, like I think I gravitated towards martial arts because I'm very competitive. And even if we're going outside and just to play some, softball or kickball just for fun, like I still want to win. Like I like, you can say it's for fun, that's cool, but I like to have fun and win more, so I think that was the thing with business that really struck me was like your results didn't they do rely on a team, but at the end of the day, the only person you could blame is you.
Mhm.
Right. And so as a business owner running the personal training and then running, my business now, it's like at the end of the day, all problems are my fault, and then the victories aren't my victories, they're my team's victories. Right. But when they have a victory, that was because I was able to pour into them to have that victory.
Yeah. It's funny with the competitiveness. I'm the same way. There's that meme that's going viral in like King and Queens when Kevin James is like giving 120% in the softball game, like just the beer league softball. He's like turning two. I'm like, that's like, what's wrong with that? That's what I do as well. It's like, I don't care if I'm 40 years old. I'm going to turn two. It's the same type of thing. That's hilarious.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So, like the early stages of getting into personal training and you build it up into a six-figure big business, being there in myself, it's a challenging thing to do to get that success and keep that moving forward. Going back to the early days before you started your own business, what was that process like of getting in? Was it a pretty kind of easy transition of building this up, or what was kind of like some of the challenges early on that you found in not just the program design and like the physical side of it, but now you're trying to build a clientele.
I mean, I think I had an easy start, right? And because I worked for a company, um, that they had, again, the first position I had was a personal training sales counselor. So like as that position, they had a whole team of those people that they didn't sell gym memberships. They only sold personal training packages, right? So I didn't have to find clientele necessarily. Could I sell personal training? Yes. And I did one time. And then the sales counselors got all mad at it. And then I was like, okay, sorry, you're not here at 5 a.m. What am I supposed to do?
Right.
But that part was easy for me. But when I left them and went private, to a private gym, and they didn't necessarily have a sales team built out. Like I helped build the actual, personal training side of that business because they didn't have one before. And so now having to create a system and find leads, even though they're already in a gym, so I don't have to do marketing. I just have to, call clients and all that kind of stuff. That was definitely a learning curve, right? And I think for me, because I mean, going into that gym, like there was trainers that had been there 10, 20 years,
Sure.
so coming into as the one of the youngest trainers and the new trainer, it's like that you already get like, that side eye from the other trainers, right? You're going to take my business and whatever.
Yeah.
And so my thing was like, I could call everyone and I can keep doing this cold calling thing, or I could just go walk on the floor and talk to people, right?
Yeah.
And so I think my strategy was always just planting seeds. And like my personal training business too, I actually didn't even have a social media real presence when I had my own company, right?
Mhm.
So everything was in person and it was all organic referrals and stuff. But it all came just from, making connections, planting the seed. And so I would see someone doing a squat and their form was off, and I would just walk by, hey, if you don't mind, just give you a quick tip. And I wouldn't even pitch them about personal training. I would just give them the advice and then walk away. And then sometimes they'll be like, hey, wait, and other times they wouldn't. And then next time you see them on the gym, you say, what's up? And, when you're talking to them about correcting their form, someone else might overhear it and then all of a sudden inquire. So I
Yeah.
think that was the best way I built up a clientele. And then the one thing I did, which I didn't really realize at the time was a strategy, was I didn't just sit around in the gym. Like when I didn't have clients, if I wasn't actively like walking the floor, planting seeds, like I actually just went out to my car and just took a nap or, was researching stuff,
Sure.
but I didn't do it in the gym where people could see me not busy. Because if you don't look busy, then people are like, okay, yeah, no one else is training with them. But if every time someone sees you, you're with someone, you're creating that illusion essentially that you're busy if you're not, right?
Yeah. That's an interesting thing you just said there, Devin. I've been on this kick of like with different energy spaces. It's like because certain spots like hold energy. Like I see a lot of people that if you work from home and you sit at your desk and you're doing other things in there,
Mhm.
it's like versus working, you can naturally get into like an energy shift of knowing that, oh, if I sit down here, it's something I'm not doing. So like as you kind of did there, if you're not doing something in the gym, just leave, get out of the energy. So it's almost a subconscious thing with mindset too, that when you know you're in the space when you're doing work, you're naturally going to get into work as well. And I've told this with people who like exercise or train from home. It's like if you have a space where you're training, try not to do anything else in that spot. Like that's just the place that you go and you exercise. Because if you start to cross pollinate those areas, it can be very easy to get into a different mindset when you go into that area versus you're stepping in there to do a job.
Yeah, and actually I agree with you 100%. And actually I've heard that before, and now that you say it, I actually have a real like life example of this. And I didn't really think of it, because I wasn't always big on like energy space and stuff. And then I started noticing it when I actually started doing it and trying to like, let's see if it works. So the biggest one is, most people have a TV in their bedroom, right?
Mhm.
I actually have a TV in my bedroom that I don't even know if it's plugged in still.
Yeah.
Like, but there
It's
was the
just a
first,
brick.
yeah, it's just there. But that was the first one. It was like, I heard people saying that when you go into your room, like don't watch TV, that's the place for sleeping. If you have a spouse or something like that, doing the deed.
Hooking up. Yep.
Yeah, but again, like, that's that space. So when you lay down in bed, like that's your mind already knows it's time to, rest, right?
Mhm.
And so I will say probably the last 3 years, like I haven't watched TV in the room, and I definitely noticed like before I would be laying in bed and just staring at the ceiling, and then be like my mind's still going, then turn the TV on and so forth. Now I can literally lay down in bed and I fall asleep within minutes.
Yeah. It is. It's powerful. I got so deep into this that like I would have a couch and on one side of the couch I would read and on the other side of the couch I would watch TV. It's
Hmm.
like I got crazy woo-woo on it, but there is something to that. And I think with a lot of people who are trying to manage their time and especially with personal growth, it's like it's often we think of it as time, but it's really more about focus, right? And the faster you can focus in the space where you need to do these things, the more efficient and the more effective that you're going to be.
Exactly. I mean, you got to think like if you go to go to a job and you have to put your uniform on, mentally you're already, you put yourself in that space, right? Let's
Mhm.
say like Kobe Bryant, he puts his, he would put his jersey on and he would be putting on the Black Mamba face in the
That's
mask as
it.
well, right?
Mhm.
He takes a jersey off, he's Kobe Bryant, right?
Yeah.
So that's the best way to kind of think about it. But even in the same room, right? Because actually my business partner runs the gym and stuff. So I actually, work remote, and let's say I'm at home working, my couch, if I'm at my couch, it's, I'm hanging out with my daughter, relaxing, doing whatever. If I'm eating, I'm not going to eat at the couch. I'm going to eat at the table,
Mhm.
right? That's the place for eating. But I don't work at that table.
Yes.
That's not the work table. I work from a desk, right?
Mhm.
And I don't eat at the desk. I don't do anything else beside the desk. I mean, sometimes my daughter draws at the desk,
Sure. Yeah.
but if I sit down in that chair, like everything else is basically just tunnel visioned out.
Yeah, I think it's such a huge mindset hack that we're going into. I love it. So now going from the work that you were doing, getting started, and then at 28 is when you really took the leap and you're like, I'm going to go and be a gym owner.
Mhm.
What was your thought process in that time? I know you said like you wanted to really create something that was your own. But it is a leap of faith. There's probably some fear and some kind of scary times around that. What was that transition like for you from going from working in a space to now, all right, I'm on my own. I've got to build this up. What was that like?
Yeah, so 28, it was when I went from the personal training company and I was like, okay, we're really gonna open this gym. And honestly, my wife is the one that kind of gave me that final push. I mean, for years before, I had been trying to open a gym, failed business partners or failed investors and so forth, but I didn't really have the concept that I have now. And so it was just, I just wanted to open a gym, right?
Yeah.
And didn't really have any real significant differentiating factors or anything. And so finally I started developing, like, for the last year, so like 26, 27, I started developing what now is Strive 11. And my wife was like, look, we're married now. I want to have a baby, before I'm 30. Like, so if you're going to take this jump, do it now. And I
Mhm.
was like, yeah, but like right now everything's steady, and she's like, I know you want to do it. And I was like,
Mhm.
okay. So then from there, it was like, well, I did this once already with a personal training company, left the private, gym and just dove in. And it was like, what's different? Like, you learn the things as you go sometimes. And
Yeah.
for me, that was just the best way to do it, was take the jump. Now, that doesn't work for everyone. Some people need to, gradually get into, trying to build it, and then once they have it fully working, then transition. But for me, I can't separate my brain like that. I have to be fully dove in and have the pressure so that, I could basically make that diamond.
Yeah. Looking back on that, do you think you would have still done it if your wife didn't give you like that kind of nudge of like, you got to do this now?
Yeah, I mean, I've always been a person of, it's not a matter of if, it's just a matter of when,
Yeah.
right? So for years, I was telling, clients would ask, like, if I wanted to do this forever. I've had clients pitch me on becoming a salesperson for their business and so forth. And I was just like, no, I'm going to open a gym. So for me, it was just telling them, and it was like, okay, I might do it this year, next year. I just got to, find this, that, and whatever.
Mhm.
And so her giving that push, it was like, okay, well, whether I can find an investor or a partner or not, like, just do it. Like, doesn't, you don't need to have all the things you wanted. You can find those later. So it was just that, like, kind of jump start to that. But I think I would have, regardless, have opened. I think the timing and everything was just aligning, because we actually, during COVID, we actually ran the model in the park for a year, rain or shine. And that was like in between my personal training, my partner's,
Mm.
career, and his, training. And so we were kind of testing it out, fixing some of the stuff. And then in the whole time, we were looking for locations and trying to get a COVID deal, because so many businesses were closing.
Sure.
And then we actually found a location a year later, which used to be a GameStop, and got a great deal on it. And we're like, okay, let's do it. Let's sign it and go. And then he was a little nervous. My wife was a little nervous. She's like, well, what happens if COVID comes back? I was like,
Sure.
we'll figure it out. I was like, there's always a solution. You just got to know. You just got to find it.
Yeah. Has that always been your thought process of like, we'll figure it out, or was that something that seemed like it evolved over time?
I mean, I think not knowing, that was always kind of my thought process. But for me, I've always been a person where like I don't get nervous. Like let's say for example in college, right? People would get all nervous right before a test and they're holding a book, their book they haven't brought all semester. They're, holding it right in front of them, reading every word. I'm like, what are you doing? And they're like, I want to make sure I get everything. I was like, what you know, and what you don't know, you don't know at this point. Like for me, I don't worry on things I have no control over changing, and I don't stress about them. If it's out of my control, it's out of my control.
Yeah.
Once it's in my control, I'll cross that bridge when I get there. Right. So same thing with like, we'll figure it out. It's like, if I worry about every what if, then I'm just going to keep worrying and I'm just going to keep thinking because there's endless what ifs and endless possibilities of why it won't work, but at the same time, you don't know which ones are going to take into fruition and which ones aren't. So it's like, just cross the ones as they come. Right.
Hmm.
You have to be strategic to a degree, but I mean, I wrote a business plan for my gym and, we probably used a third of it.
Yeah.
It's like that's your business or in life is adaptable, right? You have to know that you're going to be rolling with the punches. And again, as things come, you cross that bridge. Don't worry about the rest. Don't worry about the next bridge like until you get there.
Yeah. One of my favorite stories, Devin, is with the guy who was in the Pro-Am golf tournament with the professional golfer, and he was really nervous about going because he's going to be playing with these guys who are way better than him. So we got there like 2 hours beforehand to go to the driving range, and he's just hitting every club that's going on. And then the pro golfer that he was playing with shows up like 10 minutes beforehand, drops three balls down, hits like one wedge, one iron, and then another club. And he just looks and he's like, "All right, you ready to go?" And he's like, "Is that's it? That's all you're doing?" He's like, "If you didn't bring it with you, you're not going to find it out there." And it was like, it was the whole process, like you were talking about with the book of like, yeah, like sometimes like you just need to go with what you know at the time and you'll figure it out as you go along the course.
Exactly. I mean, that's all it is. I mean, there's so many people that have dreams and have aspirations, but again, it's only a dream and it stays a dream this year and next year, and it'll be a dream next year, because you don't want to take action because you're thinking about every single case scenario of what if it doesn't work. But then you have to flip that perspective and be like, what if it does work? And what if it's the most amazing thing that ever happened to you?
Mhm.
Right.
Yeah, I love that. It's a powerful frame, a mindset shift. So during that time with, I mean, you've got this plan now, you've got your business partner. Obviously, there was things that probably popped up during that time that were really challenging for you. What were some of the biggest early challenges that maybe you didn't foresee that you had to go through and overcome?
I will say it's a saying now that I like to say and it's from a lesson that I learned with just my business partner. Because when we first opened, it was just us. We didn't have a team. We didn't, we bootstrapped a lot of it, so that we could. And I mean, he wasn't an entrepreneur by any means. So I told him, I was like, we need some reserves for when I break things because things are going to break, things are not going to work. So one thing I learned was common sense is only common to the person that knows it. And what I mean by that is there was things that I would do or, fix or, have a conversation with someone and save a membership that it was common sense on how to go about the process to me, but it wasn't to him because he's never sold. He's never done any of these things. And that really, was affirmed once I stepped away to launch the franchise side and he was running the business. And all of a sudden I was looking at the numbers. I was like, dude, what is happening? Like we're taking a dip everywhere. And it was because he was trying to figure things out and not bring him to my attention because he didn't want to seem like he didn't know, how to solve it. And he wanted to, have that pride. And so I was like, dude, I know the answers to half these problems. Like we could have solved this. So then it was like a realization that it's not common sense to solve these problems. So that allowed me to really build out those systems and processes so that him and every franchisee doesn't have to face that. Right. So going into our managers and everything, just because you know how to sell and follow up and, upsell, downsell, all that stuff doesn't mean the next person knows how to.
Yeah.
Right. So that's one of the biggest lessons I think that I learned right out the gate with him was, he doesn't know how to sell and he can talk, but he doesn't know how to transition. And once money comes into the conversation, all of a sudden it was like Stutter McGee. And I was like, dude, you're fine. Like just talk, so that was, I think it was one of the biggest struggles in the beginning, but now, I mean, with the whole common sense is only common to the person that knows it, it has changed the perspective of the whole team.
Sure. I think common sense is only common to the person that's such a powerful just life lesson, I think, of everything. I've said this before because most of my day is spent either with people like you doing podcasts or people who are in the work of improvement. They're like really always aiming up in their lives and talking with clients who have most of my clients have been with me for a long time now. So it can almost be easy to get jaded with thinking that everybody thinks in a similar way as I do, not realizing that there's so many people out there that don't know about easy things about training or nutrition or mindset because you've been doing it for so long. It could be easy to take that for granted, not recognizing that the next person though is not in your mind. They have their own story, they have their own lives. And
Mhm.
if you follow along that path, I think a lot of coaches get down that path of thinking that everybody thinks like them, not asking questions and really understanding the person in front of them of what level they're at. And that's when I think a lot of people seem to struggle and continuously fall back and never really gain that stride forward.
Yeah, no, definitely. And like I would say like another like step further of like the common sense aspect was I had this like thought, it was like, what your reality is, right? And this goes into some of the limiting beliefs and stuff that, someone might have, whether it's opening a gym or opening a business or any area. Your reality is your reality, but that's not reality, right? Reality is a fictional word that is really the perspective that has been shaped over your life through your past experiences, over your past relationships in obstacles. But that doesn't mean the next person's reality and perception of reality is going to be the same, because their life, their obstacles, their journey has been different. So they're going to view the same situation differently. Now, the real thing is, can you, especially in business, can you view a situation or an obstacle and view it from different points of view? Because
Mhm.
if you can, now you can start to resonate and really connect with people and know where they're coming from, instead of just thinking that that's not how this works. So this is not how you should believe in things or think about things. When in reality, like that's not how reality works.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah. So I want to go into some of the franchising work that you did because you built this business up with Strive and then eventually launched it into a franchise. Was that always the plan early on, or was this something that came about when you realized, okay, now we've got a set product that's working really well. Maybe we can go into this. What was that process like for you?
So my thing is to always take the harder path, right? And not taking the path least traveled and stuff like that necessarily, but taking the path that very few are successful at, just to prove to myself and also prove to others that you can do it. And so originally, like when I was first trying to open a gym and just had a basic model, that wasn't even a thought. But as I started to develop the Strive 11 program and knew how it was different and everything, I was like, before we even opened our doors, I was like, we're going to franchise this. And the reason I wanted to franchise it wasn't for money. It was because like my number one core value is to have a positive impact on as many lives as I can. And so one, it hit my thing of doing the path that's going to be harder and not as many people succeed at. But also two, how many more lives can I impact if I open just corporate locations, or if I allow other people to open up their own versions
Mhm.
and impact their members? Not only am I having a ripple effect and having an indirect impact on their members' lives, but I'm also getting to impact the franchisees' lives and their trainers and their staff's lives as well.
Mhm. Yeah. What's the biggest difference you found from talking with people who are coming in for personal training? It's a very personal venture to now you're speaking with people who want to open up a business and inspire and impact other people. Is there a big difference between like the struggles or like the conversation that you're having, or is it pretty similar?
I mean, the struggles are different and the conversations I would say are different, because if you're a personal trainer and you want to stay a personal trainer, by all means, there's no knocks to that. It's a great career, great profession. But you can't be a personal trainer. You can't have a personal trainer's mindset and open a gym, right? They're
Mm,
two different beasts. If you're being a personal trainer, you have your connection with your clients. You're going to be always focused on your that personal relationship with your clients. You're not going to be pouring into your team of other personal trainers as much as you should, right? So personal trainers that open up personal training studios is essentially kind of a hub for everyone to kind of do their own thing. And so you just have to have that mindset shift. If you really want to open a gym and run a business, are you doing this to basically take the next step in your personal training career, or are you doing this because you want to create a business and essentially a career where you can have it fully running by itself, whether you're there or not? Because if that's the mentality that you have, then you can really open up a gym that will scale, because whether I want to be in the gym or not, the business will still run. But if I'm only doing personal training, like, there are no sick days, there are no, paid time off. Like, you don't get paid if you're not training clients. So again, it's really just what the person wants out of life. If they want to just be hands-on with their one-on-one or, semi-private clients, by all means do that. But if you want to run something that is going to run itself, that you can truly scale, then you got to start leveling up your mindset to realize that you have to really focus on having that personal training connection, but with your team.
Yeah. What's the conversations that you're having with people of coming in? Are a lot of them in this mindset, do you feel already, or is it a lot that are personal trainers who almost think that maybe this is just the next step that I'm supposed to do, but not really understand like what they're getting into? Because I agree, like ownership versus personal train, it's very different, and it's not just the day-to-day stuff in there. It is a different mentality. Do you see a lot of people are already understanding that, or is that kind of like a tough come to Jesus moment for a lot of people that you're talking to?
Honestly, it's weird because I'll I'll start off by saying this. What my sister-in-law actually told me, she met this gentleman, and somehow in the conversation, she said that, my brother-in-law owns a gym, Strive 11, and he was like, "Wait, your brother-in-law is Devin?" And then she's like, "Yeah, how do you know him?" He's like, "He is the only personal trainer that I know over the years. I used to work with him, and I mean, I looked him up, and I was like, I don't remember who that guy was, but he was like, he's the only trainer that I knew that actually said he was going to open a gym and actually opened a gym, right?"
That's awesome.
And I say that because a lot of trainers, they say they want to open a gym, but they get hit with some of the problems at the personal training level, and then they either abandon ship and go find a stable career, or they're like, I just need to be a part of a team that can give me clients, or the next level in personal training, right? I want to be a sports team athletic coach.
Mhm.
I want to be a strength and conditioning coach for this, over here. And so most of the conversations I'm actually having are with like fitness enthusiasts more so than personal trainers, right?
Mm.
Someone that wants to have an impact, that loves fitness, maybe even has a background in fitness, but they want to open a business. And then they're like, well, my passion is fitness. I want to be an entrepreneur. I'm going to combine the two. Right. So have been a few personal trainers that I have talked to, and some of them, I honestly just told them, I was like, I don't think this is going to be the fit for you, because I could see that they weren't even open to the idea of switching their mindset. And I was like, I'm just going to save you and me the trouble.
Yeah. It's a tough conversation, right? And, I think I'm curious what you think about this, Devin, is like with the culture that we have, specifically with, the hustle-based culture, and like everything's out there of like, make your own way, make your own path. It's looked down upon to be someone who wants to be on a team or just kind of run a program and, have an impact and have a client book. And I almost think like some people might look at that as like settling for something, when it's like, no, it's like that's actually a really good thing. If that's where you really thrive and you really enjoy that, that's totally fine. Like going into entrepreneurship and starting for something from scratch is not for everybody.
Mhm.
And just because it's not for you and that's where you lie, there's nothing wrong with you. But it almost seemed like with cultural work, especially if you're so into like social media, it seems like everything's pushed into that direction so much.
No, yeah, I agree. I mean, and believe me, that's why I say there's no knocks on if you want to be a personal trainer, if you want to just be a one-on-one coach, by all means. Like, you could still make a very good living, and you
Mhm.
could scale that, even seven figures if you do it right. So there's no limitations to anything in that space, whether you want to be a solopreneur or an entrepreneur, with the team. But again, if you want to join a team, businesses still need entrepreneurs too, right?
Mhm.
People that we bring on our team, like, they have to have some form of self-drive, right? And even my business partner, he tells me, he actually told me the other day, he was like, dude, he's like, I heard the term entrepreneur. He's like, I realized that's what I am. He's like, even though we're both business owners, he was like, because he's like, most of the time, he's like, I won't find the solution. He's like,
Mhm.
he's like, that's just not my role. He's like, I don't want it to be my role.
Yeah.
He's like, that's you. He's like, so you tell me, give me an idea, and then give me some strategies, and I'll figure it out from there. I'm like, hey man, that's okay. You just tell me what you need, and I'll do it. But
Yeah.
I think that it's one of those things where social media tells you you need to be an entrepreneur and you need to have a team and you need to do. It's like you don't need to do any of those things, right? If you want to just be a trainer and that's what fulfills your purpose and your passion, do it, right? Actually, as the franchise owner and stuff, I still have a few clientele that are like my elderly clientele that I've had for years that that's almost my break time. So like in between calls and stuff,
Yeah.
like I have some sessions and that's not work to me. Like I really like doing that. Right. So
Sure.
I still have some of those people too, because that's still, one of my passions. So again, there's no right way to do things and there's no wrong way to go about it either. You don't need to, have a company. You don't need to do, these big crazy things if that's not what fills you or fuels you. For me personally, that's just what did. I just like to, take that next step. But also for me, my thing was I hated turning down people. And when I was personal training, like without exaggeration, I had 12 to 16, clients a day, all hour bookings, and that was Monday through Saturday, and I took Sundays off. I even had clientele that I was selling on a wait list, right? So that they knew that I would basically text my wait list if someone canceled, and then whoever came in got it,
Mhm.
you know. But again, from that point, it was like I didn't like selling that package, and I didn't like telling people I couldn't train them either. So it was like, what's my next step? I can't hire another personal trainer on at
Yeah.
being a personal trainer. Then that's the limitation, right? So it's like if you're finding that is your limitation where you want to help more people that you can't currently help more people, well, maybe you need to start thinking about scaling. How can you start building trainers to be like you and build out a team?
Yeah. Yeah. I remember I read Gino Wickman's book Traction, who put like the best framework on this of like the visionary and the integrator, right? It's like, and you need both. You need one person who's thinking of all the ideas, and then the other one who's making sure you're doing all the things well that you said you're going to do. So you're not just jumping all over the place.
Yep.
And I think we romanticize the dreamer and visionary and all this stuff, but not demonize, but kind of almost look second class citizen to the ones that are really good integrators, the ones that are really good technicians and the managers, per se. Like great managers are fantastic and you need them. You need people to keep things in line of what you said you're going to do. Because if everybody's just dreaming about ideas all the time, nothing's getting done.
Yep. And that's the thing that I think people do have it twisted. It's like, believe me, I wish I was a better integrator.
Yeah.
Like and being a business owner, like that's why like my business partner, luckily enough, he's an excellent integrator, right? But for me, like you have to wear multiple hats when you first start a business, right? So there was some integrator stuff that I had to wear and teach him how to kind of hone in on those entrepreneurial skills. But again, for me, like my brain goes left and right more so than not. And having someone that really ties it down and can execute on the ideas is what creates scale,
Yeah.
right? Because if you're just thinking about ideas, I mean, we're about to hit, January 1st, depending on when this podcast goes. But, right now, at the end of December and New Year's resolutions come up, right? So think about everyone that hits, January 1st is going to create a New Year's resolution. Well, right now you're a visionary,
Yeah.
right? The integrators are the ones that take that vision and actually make it happen.
100. Yeah. So with all the work that you've done, there's something that you put up about imposter syndrome. I always think this is an interesting topic on here. Did you feel any of syndrome and how did you overcome that? Like of getting into all these different hats that you're wearing because you're aiming for the toughest thing. But when you're not there yet, it's really hard to kind of envision putting yourself in there. What was your process of maybe not just overcoming this, but maybe just subsiding this as a whole?
It's funny because I told my business partner this when we had first opened and we were hitting some like, rocky moments in learning what we didn't know. Um, I was like, I feel like I sold you on leaving your career, leaving everything you got to join my vision. And so there was an internal feeling of like imposter syndrome when things were hitting, the rocks. It was like, dang, did I just oversell myself, to him, to everyone?
Mhm.
But then I think more so like being a part of a mastermind and the upper level of this mastermind and being in a room. I was at a round table with them, and we were in Rosarito, California, or Rosarito, Mexico, and not a lot of people wanted to go. So because maybe it was Mexico or I don't know, but there was only maybe 10 of us. So there was no hiding in the back of the room or anything like that. And I was the youngest one in the room, but also the newest one in owning an actual business. Mm-hmm. And so we're all at the table doing breakouts where, you tell your problems, you say what's going right, what's going wrong, and then everyone else gives advice. Well, I was like, okay, I'm not naturally an outspoken person. I'm not, one that's going to be the center of attention in the room, but I was like, I have to try to contribute too. So I'm already feeling like being an imposter, being in the room with these 7 and 8 figure earners, and who have had companies for 10, 20 years. And my business has been open 2 years, So each person that went, I would listen to 1 or 2 people start to chip in, and then I would just give some advice, right? And then finally, I was the last one that it came around to, and then I told everyone, I was like, look, I came into this super nervous, and believe me, I'm still nervous as I'm talking right now to you guys. But it was one of those things where my advice might have helped you. It might not. You might just give me a pat on the head and be like, yeah, good try, But again, it doesn't hurt me to give you the advice, but it might help you to receive the advice. Mm-hmm. If you don't use it, you don't use it. It doesn't affect me either way, right? So once I realized that and I said it out loud, and it was one of those things where I was kind of just talking and thinking at the same time, and I said it, and then it had that realization for me. It was like, you can say these big things, but really it comes down to your action, right? Mm-hmm. So for me, you could say you're going to open a gym, but unless you really do it, then that's just the imposter version of you. Mm-hmm. Once you open a gym, you are a gym owner, whether you feel like it or not, right? You are an entrepreneur, whether you feel like it or not. You might not feel like an Elon Musk, but again, you'll get there. He didn't get there, overnight, right? He built PayPal, he built Tesla, he built all those things. And over time, he learned different tools. He learned how to delegate. He learned how to really, be a leader to his team. But that wasn't from day one. Looking back on it, I'm not the same business owner I was a year ago, let alone 5 years ago, right? And I won't be the same business owner that I am in a year, right? It's a game, it's a leveling game, right? So it's constant progression, just like your fitness, right? You work out today, you look in the mirror, yeah, you might see the pump and everything, but tomorrow morning you don't see any change. Mm-hmm. But you go to the gym again and you look in the mirror the next morning, you don't see any change, and you do it again and you do it again. And then all of a sudden, over time, those work and that consistency starts to compound, and now you're not the same person that you were when you first started that journey.
Yeah. No, it's really a really interesting story, specifically with the roundtable. And with this term imposter syndrome, I think often we think like, I'm a business owner. That means something in your mind. It means like you have XYZ things in your life or you do stuff. But as you said, like as soon as you open that up and you're doing it, you are that person. Like you are doing it. You might not be at the scale that you want based on the ideal that you have, but no, you're actually doing it. So it's like you're actually like, that's the best way to, change and reframe that from there. So I thought that was really powerful. I wanted to ask you about, I'm always curious about how people balance things in the life. And I don't even love that term balance. I think harmony is a better one, but you're a girl dad, you have a daughter, you have a spouse, you also run a successful business, a lot of things that you're trying to be very good at in your life. What's your process of balancing things in your life so you can give the right energy to everything that you need to do in your day by day?
I think it's just time management, really. And like you, I'm not a fan of the word balance, but I think it's because when people think balance, they think of like a seesaw. If it's balanced, it's 50-50. That's not how life works, right? Your balance isn't my balance, just like your reality isn't my reality, right? So you have to create your own balance or your own homeostasis for your life, right? So for me, when I wake up, I help my wife and my daughter, get ready, get out of the house and all that. And then that's my work time. Then from there, before my wife and my daughter, I see them, that's all work. That's what the mindset that I'm in. Once they get home, actually work is done for the next, 2 hours, or 3 hours, depending on when my daughter goes to sleep. And then maybe have an hour or so if my wife's still, up, and wants to hang out and stuff. Once she goes to sleep, if there's still work that I need to do, then I go back into, work mode to finish whatever I needed to finish. but it's all about separating the time. And just like the energy zones and stuff, same thing, right? Sometimes you might need to leave the office to get yourself into a different mindset or different, frame. But again, for you, I would recommend like you try to plan your day out ahead of time, right? Just like you don't go into the gym not knowing what you're going to do, right? You plan your day out ahead of time. I knew we were going to have this conversation, right? I knew the meeting I was going to have before it. I know the one after it. Roughly, I know when I'm going to have lunch. A few different opportunities, but again, the gist of it. Does that mean it has to go according to only that plan? No, it can have some adjustments and stuff and some changes, but at least I know what my outline is and who gets what time and what energy of me where.
Yeah. No, I love that. Oftentimes we do think of it like that seesaw, like everything's even. Like, oh, I give 20% here, 20%. I always thought of the analogy of juggling, right? It's like if you think of balance with juggling, that means you're throwing all the balls up at the same time and they're all at the same height. Well, then they're all going to fall. You can't catch them all. It's more like one goes up as you catch another one. They have different percentages at
Yep.
different time from there. So, how old's your daughter now?
She'll be 3 next month.
Yeah. What
So,
is what's having a daughter like taught you about being a man and being a business owner?
I mean, I'm the oldest of 3 boys in my family, so there wasn't. I mean, my dad, Cuban dad, police officer dad, it wasn't like a super like cuddly household, I would say,
Sure.
right?
Yeah.
It wasn't like strict or anything like that, but it was like, you know, you don't cry, you do what you need to do, get it done. And so I've always just been that kind of straightforward person. And even being the oldest brother, always looking out for them and, whatever. So having a daughter all of a sudden had to bring a new side out of me, I think. And it was that more compassionate, that more like lovey side that I'm not naturally used to. Like my wife even jokes, before my daughter, she was like, honestly, you're cold hearted. Like you just, cause I'll just say it how it is, not being rude or anything, but it's like, if you wanted me to, give you a crying shoulder, it's like, I'll give it to you. But
Mhm.
if you want a solution, then I'll give it to you.
Yeah.
But I'm not going to sit here and tell you everything's going to be okay and listen to the same problem 10 times. Like, do you want a solution or not? You
Mhm.
know? So she was like, you need to lighten up a little bit. I was like, that's just me. I don't know what else you want. And then all of a sudden
Yeah.
having a daughter, she was like, this is weird. And I was like, I know. I was like, all of a sudden, like my daughter does stuff, I start smiling, and if she gets hurt, all of a sudden I'm like, "Are you okay?" Like I'm all worried, and I was like, "Damn, this is definitely a new side of me."
I love it. That's great. Um, Devan Gonzalez, brother, thank you so much. I really appreciate you taking this time. I love hearing about the work that you've done and the journey that you've gone and all the success that you've had with this. So I really appreciate you taking the time today.
Oh, thank you so much for having me on. This is awesome.
No doubt, man. So if people want to check out more of Strive 11, the franchisee, just the work that you're doing, what's the best place that we can direct them?
Yeah, they can go to the website strive11 with 11fitness.com. Same thing on social media, but check us out, and more than happy to help any way I can.
Perfect, man. Awesome. Brother, thank you so much. Really appreciate it. Listeners, thank you so much. Go follow Devan. I'll catch you guys in the next one. All right,
Thank you.
peace.